In Britain, during the Dark Ages, after the Roman Empire has fallen, the land is in ruins and the several different tribes fight amongst themselves. Meanwhile, in Ireland, the land has flourished and has not suffered from the Romans' invasion because of the protection of the sea. Ireland doesn't want the other Britons to unite because it wouldn't be profitable for them, so their king has decided to attack the remaining tribes to prevent that from happening. In the remote moorland of Tantallon, a young boy and his father are out hunting for rabbits. The boy is learning how to hunt while the father watches and gives him pointers. The boy catches a single rabbit and feels he's ready to hunt for stags. He's quite a brave young boy, and his father is proud of him. As they go back home, the boy questions his father about why the other tribes are joining against the Irish, and his father answers that someone needs to stand up to them. The boy's name is Tristan. He is the son of a Celtic Lord Aragon and resides in Castle Tantallon. The castle will be the venue to discuss the fate of the Britons, and Tristan's father is preparing to meet with the other tribes' leaders to discuss the war, hoping he will be able to convince them to fight against the Irish. His idea is to unite all Britons under a single king. When they arrive back at the castle, a clueless Tristan runs away with his rabbit while his father finds out most of the tribes are already there, waiting for him. Aragon's very hopeful about the meeting. Late that night, the lords are all reunited in the dining halls of Castle Tantallon. Tristan is roasting his rabbit when his father catches everyone's attention, including Tristan's, by pulling Britain's map. He shows them the divisions between the tribes and how it's beneficial for the Irish that they are used to fighting for themselves. But if they were to be united under one king, they would have doubled the forces to fight the Irish, with imminent victory. He shows them the treaty of unification he has made, and the other lords start wondering who would be the king. Aragon suggests Lord Mark, a fair and good lord. The other lords aren't so sure of this decision. It seems too convenient that Aragon is pledging for him, but Lord Mark is persuasive, and the first one to sign the treaty. He wants to be king, and he wants to end the war because he has a child on the way. Before any of the lords have the chance to change their minds and sign the treaty, a guard bursts into the room and yells they are being invaded by the Irish. The village within the castle is already on fire, and people are desperately running to get away from the attack. Aragon tells a guard and tells him to go protect the women. Meanwhile, Aragon and the other lords barricade the dining room and get ready to fight. The lords start questioning how the Irish knew they would be reunited, but there isn't time for guessing. Soon the Irish break into the room and a fighting ensues. Tristan, always very brave, grabs a knife and tries to join the fighting. But at the last minute his father catches him and puts him in a hold under the floorboards. As soon as he closes the hatch, he is stabbed by a sword and dies. Tristan hears the cries of desperation and tries to open the hatch, but his fingers get wet with his father's. Instead of crying, he opens the hatch and the scene he sees leaves him speechless. Both his father and mother were killed and the castle is on fire. An Irish man appears out of the blue and tries to attack a confused Tristan, but at the last minute, his uncle Mark pushes him and loses his hand in the process. Still, through the unbearable pain, he kills the Irishman. It's only after he's almost passing out that he sees his pregnant wife amongst the dead. Across the Celtic Sea, at Dunluce Castle, the funeral of the Irish queen is happening. In the middle of the ceremony, the King Donnchad leaves his only child, Princess Isolde, to hear the news of his attack on the Britons. His guard has brought him the treaty Mark had signed, and with satisfaction, he rips it to pieces. While he's basking on his victory, Isolde is confused and sad that her mother died. Back in Cornwall, Tristan arrives at Mark's village and is adopted by Mark's sister. She also has a son of Tristan's age called Melot, who is quite the bully. After a couple of days pass, Tristan is still traumatized and Melot keeps pestering him and calling him a coward. One day, Tristan explodes and they fight. Mark is amazed by Tristan's ability with a sword, despite his age. 9 years later, Tristan is a grown man. And after years, he and Melot are thick as thieves. After the attack from the Irish, Mark rebuilt his castle in rock, which is harder for the Irish to invade, and the Irish king isn't happy about it. To retaliate, he orders his henchmen to go to Cornwall and take a bunch of young and capable people as slaves. Then, he rewards his henchmen's loyalty with his daughter's hand in marriage. Meanwhile, a clueless Isolde stares across the sea and imagines what Britain looks like. Her maid tells her it's a land of evil and grief, but Isolde still wants to see it one day. Later on, when her father tells her she's going to marry a brute of a man, she's not happy and asks if she's just a trading object to her father. The king answers she has to obey him and do her duty as princess. There is nothing Isolde can do or say to change the stoic and hard-hearted man, so she leaves. The only bright side to this situation is that her husband-to-be is leaving for a mission in Cornwall, and who knows when he's coming back. Days later, the Irish arrive in Cornwall and capture a bunch of young women with the promise of war in case they retaliate. Tristan, who is now Mark's right-hand man, plans to attack the Irish with Mark's blessing. They call all the Briton lords again and ask for their help. The plan is to ambush the Irish before they leave the land and free the people. The plan works well enough, with the exception of Tristan getting poisoned after killing Isolde's betrothed. Apparently he dies, and there is even a funeral for him. But what no one knows is that the poison only paralyzes, not kills. Back to Ireland, Isolde dreams of a man lost in the sea. She abruptly wakes up and decides she needs to leave before her betrothed comes back, and she's forced to marry him. While she's running away with her maid, she sees a boat stranded. Isolde is curious and goes to check. Lying halfway out of the boat, there is a young, handsome man with shaggy brown hair and wounds on his face. It's Tristan. Isolde checks his breathing and notices he is alive. They drag him away from the boat and into a hut on the beach. The man is cold and needs heat as soon as possible, so Isolde and hugs him close to her body to share her heat with him. It's hours later when Tristan finally awakes from a feverish sleep. When he opens his eyes, the first thing he sees is the beautiful face of a blonde young woman. She has a heart-shaped face and bright blue eyes. Tristan is confused and still riding the fever out, so he passes out. When he wakes up again, he's alone in the huts and grabs a rock to defend himself when he sees someone entering. He's like a wounded animal. Isolde is very patient and advises him not to leave the hut or wander around the land. Tristan is confused that his enemy is helping him. But Isolde is a kind woman, and she doesn't care about wars. Isolde leaves Tristan and goes back to her castle quite pleased with herself. Every day she goes back to Tristan to bring him food, water, and treat his wounds. She lies to him about her name and station, saying she's a lady in waiting at the court. Tristan tells her his real name, and that his parents were killed by the Irish. While she's tending to the wound on his abs, Isolde slightly caresses him while Tristan watches. They're interrupted by her maid and Isolde almost jumps out of her skin. She promises to come the next day and leaves. Back in her home, she can't stop thinking about him. Tristan slowly gets better, and every day he waits for Isolde to appear. To thank her for risking her life to save him, he makes her a shell bracelet. Isolde brings books to read for Tristan while they lie side by side in front of a fire. Her maid, seeing them so cozy and intimate, warns Isolde that she needs to rest, in preparation for when her betrothed arrives. That breaks the mood and Isolde leaves. Next day, Tristan questions her about the man she's to marry, but it's obvious she has no love for him. Unbeknown to both of them, Tristan had already killed the man. Isolde tells him there's a boat that he should take to go back home and leaves. Tristan goes after her and passionately kisses her. They have a romantic moment in the hut and Isolde goes back to the castle. Next day, the men who went to Cornwall to capture slaves return and the king finds out his loyal henchman is dead. It's time for Tristan to go. Isolde helps him with the boat, and before he goes, he asks her to go with him. She can't, though. If she goes, her father will find out about her betrayal. She tells him they aren't meant to be, but to remember her once in a while. They kiss for the last time and Tristan leaves. Back in the castle, the king has found out there's a Cornwall soldier in their lands, and that the soldier killed Isolde's betrothed. Isolde is stunned, but not for the reasons the king imagines. She leaves the room with her maid while the king thinks about his next steps. He doesn't have the strength to fight another battle with the Britons, so he decides to make a tournament amongst the Britons' tribes. Whoever wins gets Isolde and some land as prize. The objective is to make them fight each other and cause a strife. While her father plans her future, Isolde sits next to her mother's tomb and stares out at the sea. Tristan arrives back in Cornwall, to the shock and happiness of everyone, especially Mark. It was almost as if he returned from the dead, which is a good omen for his people. There's a huge celebration on his name, but he doesn't want to celebrate anything. He's still heartbroken over Isolde, and keeps reminiscing about her. It's while remembering her voice that he has an idea to see her again, using the tournament as an excuse. He tells Mark he's going to fight in his name so that he can win the lands and the woman. He thinks that if Mark marries the Irish princess, the war will inevitably end, without spilling any more blood. What Tristan has no idea is that the princess is actually his beloved Isolde, and he's about to hand her to Mark. They arrive in Ireland, full of excitement and hope for the future. As for Isolde, she cannot be more frustrated and angry. She thought she got rid of an unwanted husband, but now a bunch of men are going to fight to have her. The king watches as all the Britons, including Tristan, get ready to fight. He knows Tristan was the one to kill his henchman and that he was on his island. His plan is to support one of the most disliked Briton lord, Wicted, so that when he wins, he won't have the loyalty of the other lords and the King of Ireland will have an ally through marriage that he can manipulate. It's time for the tournament to begin and Tristan stands excitedly in front of his opponent. Isolde is shocked to see him there after so little time has passed. He's talented and gives his all in a fight. He wins against all his opponents, including Wicted, which guarantees that Mark becomes the new king of Britain with Isolde at his side. Of course, Tristan still has no idea that Isolde is the woman he's in love with, so when he finally sees her face, he cannot believe it. Isolde is eager and excited, thinking she's about to marry Tristan, but the truth is much harsher. Tristan almost cries when he realizes what he has done, and Isolde is stunned. The king plans to disown her after the wedding so the alliance will be null, and the lover's unfortunate fate is all for nothing. On the way back, Tristan is crumbling to pieces. Isolde asks to talk to him, and when he goes to her, she accuses him of risking his life to win her to another man. Tristan is upset that she lied to him, but now there's nothing either one of them can do. If he leaves with her, it's treason against his king and against the treaty. Tristan is stoic and aloof as he tells her that Isolde is heartbroken. When they arrive in Cornwall, Mark is afraid Isolde is going to be ugly, but when he sees her, he's instantly taken by her beauty. Few days later, Isolde is already getting dressed for her wedding. She looks beautiful in her silver dress and crown, but her face shows her deep sadness. Isolde and Mark marry while a dejectful Tristan watches. During the celebration, before Isolde goes to her new chambers to consummate the wedding, she asks Tristan if things were different, if he would be with her. Tristan emotionlessly replies that place doesn't exist. Isolde tells him she will pretend it's him she's sleeping with and leaves. Tristan leaves the celebration to be alone in the woods, thinking about his regretful life. Meanwhile, Mark comforts a nervous Isolde before they consummate the wedding. As the days go by, Tristan isolates himself and tries not to be in the castle. Isolde still thinks about him, but slowly she gets used to married life. Mark is not a bad husband and he's always trying to make her feel welcomed and comfortable, thinking that her forlornness is because she's away from home. They get closer to one another and Tristan watches it all unfold from a distance. People start noticing his strange behavior and Isolde goes talk to him. She tells him she is worried about him, to which he snidely replies he can see how worried she's, holding hands and laughing with her husband. Isolde retorts that she's doing her duty, and he says he thought she would have more difficulties. Isolde holds her tears as she asks if she can't have a moment without crying. Tristan says he's getting sick of always watching her, that he feels a guilt he can't get rid of. Isolde then thinks about a plan to be with Tristan in secret, but Tristan never says if he will meet with her or not. He still feels a sense of obligation and gratitude towards Mark for saving his life as a child, so betraying him like that will be a difficult decision to make. To make things worse for Tristan, he's nominated Mark's successor in case something happens to him in times of war. Tristan doesn't want to be Mark's second and tells him that. Mark thinks Tristan's sudden depression and isolation is because of how he has reached his lifelong objective of reuniting all the tribes, leaving him nothing to do. For that reason, he refuses to let Tristan go and tells Tristan he's going to be his successor whether he wants it or not. Tristan finally relents and Mark suggests he finds a wife, to which Tristan replies that he will be forever alone. Isolde is passing through right at this moment and Mark calls her and tells her that Tristan doesn't want love. She tells him that life without love is a life full of suffering, all while being hugged by an infatuated and clueless Mark. Tristan looks her in the eyes and says that if that's the case, he will no longer be without love. That same day, Mark is going to leave for the night for a midnight hunt that gives the perfect opportunity for Tristan and Isolde to meet. She sneaks out of the castle, and Tristan leaves the hunt, albeit not unnoticed. The cunning Lord Wicked sees him leave. They meet in the woods and have a romantic moment under the full moon. Isolde asks Tristan how many women he had before and after her, and he says none. After their frolicking in the woods, Tristan's humor is way better. His thoughts are always with Isolde, and not on the war. That frustrates his friend Milot, who should have been Mark's successor by blood instead of Tristan. Tristan and Isolde continue to fool around behind Mark's back. Though Tristan's in better spirits than before, very often he is reminded of their precarious situation. If Isolde gets pregnant, there is no way to say who the father will be. At the same time, Isolde tells Tristan that she can't hate Mark, he's a good man, and she knows that their relationship cannot go on any longer. They can't hold hands out in the open or go on picnics. The only thing they have are stolen moments that end too quickly. One day, Isolde is with Mark in the village market and Tristan stalks them. He grabs some herbs and makes a wreath for her. He slips it to her without Mark noticing, but someone else notices the strange activity. Lord Wicked suspiciously watches as Tristan gives Isolde the wreath and clasps her hand in quite an intimate act. Later that day, Mark looks for Isolde and her maid has to give some excuses as to where she is. The truth is that Isolde is with Tristan again, and they are getting bold. When she returns to her chambers with Mark, he notices that her heart is beating fast and asks if there is anything he can do to make her happier. Isolde tells him she's fine, but in reality, she's getting drowned with guilt, and Mark is getting suspicious. Back in Ireland, Lord Wicked tells the Irish king that Isolde is in love with Tristan, and if he exposes their secret relationship to the other lords, Mark's morale will be low, and he will lose his hold on the other lords. His plan is to seize the throne from Mark after Tristan is arrested for treason, and help the Irish invade Cornwall. He wants to be the king, but the Irish king has another idea. He knows Wicked will never be able to hold Britain like Mark is capable of, so it's only a matter of time before the whole kingdom is in shambles. Back in Cornwall, Mark asks Tristan if it's possible to be blinded by love, so much so that he will not be able to see treason right in front of him. He shows the wreath he found amongst Isolde's things and asks if Tristan thinks she has a lover. Tristan says no. Mark proceeds to ask Tristan to follow Isolde to find out if she's cheating on him or not. The way Mark talks about Isolde makes Tristan realize that Mark really loves her. Mark tells him that Isolde filled an emptiness that he didn't know he had. Tristan replies that he's sure Isolde is loyal to Mark and that the wreath doesn't mean anything. Now it's Tristan's turn to feel crushed with guilt at what he's doing to his mentor and father figure. It's time to end his relationship with Isolde, but it might be too late. He has set their favorite spot in the woods on fire, and when Isolde goes there to meet him, all she sees is what is left from the fire. Days later, the Irish king arrives in Cornwall for Mark's crowning ceremony. He brought a fleet of ships with him, which is seen as suspicious. He promises Mark the ships will stay offshore, though. The ceremony goes without a hitch, and the coronation is complete. During the celebrations, Mark hugs Tristan and tells him that he worried for nothing. Then, he pushes Tristan to dance with Isolde. Lord Wicted asks that a slow song plays for their dance. Tristan is serious and aloof. Isolde asks him why he burnt their favorite spot in the woods, and then she gives him an ultimatum to meet her there or she will die. Tristan doesn't say anything in return and leaves after the dance is over. Isolde pretends to be feeling tired and goes after him. Unbeknown to them, Lord Wicted and the Irish king plan to expose them that day. Wicted suggests they go on a hunt, as tradition dictates, and Mark accepts it. Isolde and Tristan meet in the woods, and he tells her their relationship needs to end. She begs him not to leave her and they hug. While they are hugging, the hunting group arrives and catches them in the act. When Mark sees them, he cannot believe it. The King of Ireland takes the opportunity to say that he will not be disrespected that way and leaves, saying there's no peace with the King of Cornwall. Mark orders to arrest a crying Isolde and an ashamed Tristan. Mark is mortified and angry at such betrayal. What's worse, it interfered with their frail peace with Ireland. By now, the Irish king is getting ready to attack. Lord Wicted is sent to tell the other lords that the Irish king doesn't wish war with them, only with Mark. He gives them bags filled with gold to buy their alliance, and pledges allegiance to Merlot, Mark's nephew, and offers his services as Merlot's successor. Merlot is jealous of Tristan and frustrated with Mark, so he accepts it. While a coup is being planned behind his back, Mark visits Tristan in prison. He apologizes to Tristan for not giving him enough over the years he took him under his wing to earn his respect. He screams for Tristan to tell him why it wasn't enough. Then he accuses him of destroying everything they have been building over the years. Mark tells him he curses the day he saved him. Tristan has no words to say to Mark. He knows exactly what his hidden relationship with Isolde has caused. Mark leaves to talk to Isolde, and the first thing he asks her is how long they have been betraying him. Isolde admits that since Tristan's supposed death, she found him on the beach and fell in love with him. She apologizes to Mark and tells him that Tristan tried to stay away from her because he loves Mark. The new king sighs and leaves without saying anything to her. Surprisingly, Mark sets Tristan and Isolde free and gives them the opportunity to go away. Both Tristan and Isolde cannot believe Mark would do something like that. Isolde explains she told Mark about Ireland and the misunderstanding she caused, and that he has given them their freedom. Tristan tells Isolde to get in the boat and sends her away, asking her to remember their relationship. As the boat floats away, Isolde screams for Tristan. But he has a mission to accomplish. He goes back to the battle. Back in the castle, everyone gets in the fortress and they pull the bridge up. Half of Mark's troops deserted him and they had few people to fight. Still, the few that are left are determined to fight for their king and land. What they don't know is that there is a tunnel made by the Romans that goes all the way inside the castle, and Merlot shows it to Wicted. Wicted has a plan that he hasn't told Merlot, and soon, Merlot realizes that and starts fighting against them. Meanwhile, Mark realizes the Irish troops are only waiting for the invasion from inside to happen so that they can enter the castle. In the woods, Tristan also enters the tunnels and finds Merlot dying. He finds out that the Irish are inside the castle already, led there by Merlot. Tristan stealthily enters the castle and starts fighting against the soldiers there, which gives Mark and the others a chance to fight back. Still, despite their best efforts, Wicted manages to open the bridge to the castle and the other part of the army enters. Tristan is severely wounded, but valiantly fights against his opponents, even killing Wicted. Mark forgives him, and Tristan has a plan to help them win. He beheads Wicted and opens the gate. He shows everyone the head of a traitor, and Mark asks if the other lords are so stupid not to see the obvious manipulation by the Irish king. The lords get uncomfortable, and when the Irish king asks them to attack, they don't. In a fit of rage, the king starts attacking the soldiers around him, and the battle starts again, this time with the Britons against the Irish. Tristan falls down on the ground, dying, and asks Mark to take him to the river. There he meets Isolde, who had returned to the castle to be with him, and Tristan dies after saying that love is greater than life or death. In the end, Mark won the war against the Irish and the Britons finally had peace, at least for as long as Mark reigned. Isolde disappeared after burying Tristan with two willows that grew forever intertwined. What happened to her, no one knows.